This cute lady collapsed in the snow. What this grizzly bear did was shocking. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The wind howled through the snow-covered pines as Naomi Chen pushed forward along the narrow hiking trail. Her bright blue winter coat stood out starkly against the endless white landscape that surrounded her. She had only meant to take a short hike to clear her head, to escape the stress of her job as a wildlife photographer. But the sudden snowstorm had caught her by surprise. Now, with the temperature dropping rapidly and the path becoming less visible with each passing minute, Naomi was beginning to worry. Her legs felt heavier with each step. The backpack containing her camera equipment weighed down on her shoulders like a stone. Sweat beaded on her forehead despite the freezing cold, and her breaths came in short, painful gasps. She hadn't told anyone where she was going, a rookie mistake she now deeply regretted. The mountain trail in Glacier National Park was beautiful, but treacherous in winter conditions. Just a little further, Naomi whispered to herself, her voice immediately swallowed by the wind. I can make it to the ranger station. But her body had other plans. As she trudged up a slight incline, a wave of dizziness washed over her. The world tilted sideways, the white ground rushing up to meet her. Naomi collapsed face first into the snow, her consciousness flickering like a candle in the wind. Her final thought before darkness took her was that no one would find her in time. What Naomi didn't know was that she wasn't alone in this remote stretch of wilderness. Just beyond the tree line, a massive grizzly bear had been watching her stumbling progress. The creature, a female with thick brown fur frosted with snow, had emerged from her winter lethargy during an unusually warm spell. Now, with the sudden return of winter weather, she was caught between seasons. Not fully hibernating, not fully awake. The bear's keen nose caught Naomi's scent on the wind. Under normal circumstances, the grizzly would have avoided human contact entirely, retreating deeper into the forest. But something about the small figure lying motionless in the snow stirred something in the bear's primitive brain. Perhaps it was curiosity, or perhaps something more complex. A recognition of another living creature in distress. Slowly, cautiously, the grizzly approached. Her massive paws left deep impressions in the fresh snow as she circled the fallen woman. The bear sniffed the air, detecting the faint warmth still emanating from Naomi's body. She nudged the woman's shoulder with her snout, a low rumble escaping her throat. Naomi remained unconscious, her face pale and lips turning a dangerous shade of blue. Snowflakes gathered on her eyelashes and in her dark hair. Her camera lay a few feet away, where it had fallen from her grasp, the expensive lens half buried in white powder. The bear circled once more, then came to a decision. Instead of walking away, or worse, seeing the woman as prey, the grizzly did something extraordinary. She began to dig at the snow around Naomi's body, clearing away the powder that threatened to bury her completely. Then, in a move that defied all wild instinct, the bear lowered her massive body beside the woman, pressing her warm fur against Naomi's cold form. The wind continued to howl, and darkness began to fall across the mountain. The unlikely pair, predator and potential prey, lay together in the gathering gloom, connected by the most basic instinct of all: survival. Hours passed as the storm intensified. The bear's massive body provided a shield against the relentless wind, her fur trapping precious heat that slowly seeped into Naomi's frozen limbs. Without this unexpected source of warmth, Naomi would surely have succumbed to hypothermia within the hour. Snowdrifts formed around them, creating a natural barrier against the worst of the blizzard. As midnight approached, Naomi stirred slightly, her consciousness returning in confused fragments. Her body felt oddly warm despite the snow beneath her. Something heavy pressed against her side, something breathing. Her photographer's instincts told her to remain still, to assess the situation before making any sudden movements. Slowly, carefully, she opened her eyes. The sight that greeted her sent a jolt of pure terror through her body. A massive grizzly bear lay beside her, its enormous head just inches from her own. Every survival instinct screamed at her to run, to fight, to do something, but she remained frozen, not from the cold, but from fear. The bear's eyes were closed, its breathing deep and regular. It hadn't noticed she was awake. Naomi's heart hammered so loudly she was certain it would wake the sleeping giant. Her mind raced through her options, none of them good. She couldn't outrun a grizzly, especially in her weakened state. She had no weapon, no bear spray, nothing to defend herself with. All she could do was lie there and pray that the bear wouldn't suddenly decide she looked like a midnight snack. But as minutes ticked by and her initial panic receded, Naomi realized something strange. She wasn't cold anymore. The bear's body had somehow protected her from the deadly chill that had caused her to collapse. Was it possible that this predator had actually saved her life? The absurdity of the situation almost made her laugh despite her fear. Here she was, a wildlife photographer who had spent years trying to capture images of grizzlies from a safe distance, now cuddled up against one like it was a giant teddy bear. If her colleagues could see her now, they'd never believe it. Suddenly, the bear's eyes flicked open. Naomi's breath caught in her throat as she found herself staring directly into the deep brown eyes of one of nature's most fearsome predators. Time seemed to stop as human and bear regarded each other at point-blank range. What Naomi saw in those eyes surprised her. There was no aggression, no predatory glint, just a calm, almost curious assessment. The bear blinked slowly, as if processing the fact that the human was now awake. Then it let out a low, rumbling sound that Naomi felt reverberating through her entire body. "It's okay," Naomi whispered, surprising herself with her audacity to speak to a wild grizzly. "I'm not going to hurt you." The words were ridiculous. She was hardly in a position to hurt this massive creature, but they seemed to have a calming effect nonetheless. The bear continued to watch her, but made no threatening moves. Emboldened, Naomi attempted to shift her position slightly. Her limbs were stiff and painful, but at least she could move them. That was a good sign. No frostbite had set in yet. As she carefully flexed her fingers, something crackled in her pocket. Her satellite phone. In her panic, she had completely forgotten about it. If she could just reach it without startling the bear. Moving with agonizing slowness, Naomi slipped her hand into her coat pocket. The bear watched, its head tilting slightly in curiosity. Her fingers closed around the device and she carefully withdrew it. The battery was low, only 15% remaining, but it might be enough for one call. She had to make it count. Just as she was about to dial emergency services, a sharp crack echoed through the forest. The bear's head snapped up, its ears swiveling toward the sound. Naomi froze, her finger hovering over the call button. Another crack followed, louder this time. It sounded like a tree branch breaking under heavy weight, or footsteps. The bear rose to its feet in one fluid motion, standing protectively over Naomi. A low growl rumbled from its throat, and Naomi could feel the vibration through the ground beneath her. Something, or someone, was coming through the forest. But was it help or a new threat? "Hello?" Naomi called out, her voice weak but audible. "Is anyone there?" Silence, followed her call. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Then came a sound that sent chills down Naomi's spine. Not footsteps, but the unmistakable growl of another bear. The grizzly, standing over her, responded with a roar that shook the very air. Naomi covered her ears, the sound so powerful it seemed to rattle her bones. Through the trees, she could make out a dark shape moving toward them, another bear, even larger than her unexpected protector. With mounting horror, Naomi realized what was happening. The newcomer was a male grizzly, and by the aggressive way it was approaching, it saw either her or the female bear as a threat or potential meal. The female bear widened her stance, placing herself more firmly between Naomi and the approaching male. "No, no, no," Naomi whispered, clutching her satellite phone tightly. This couldn't be happening. She had survived the cold only to witness a potentially deadly confrontation between two massive predators, with herself caught in the middle. The male bear emerged fully from the trees now, its massive form silhouetted against the snow. It stood on its hind legs, towering at over 8 feet tall, and let out a challenging roar. The female responded in kind, not backing down an inch. Naomi knew that if the bears fought, she would be in grave danger regardless of the outcome. Even if her protective bear won, the violence might trigger her predatory instincts. And if the male won? Naomi didn't want to think about that possibility. With shaking hands, she pressed the emergency call button on her phone. To her immense relief, it connected despite the weak signal. A crackling voice answered, barely audible. "Emergency services, what's your situation?" "Help," Naomi managed, her voice a hoarse whisper. "Glacier National Park. I'm trapped between 2 grizzly bears about to fight. Northern Trail, maybe 5 miles from Pineview Lookout." "Did you say bears, ma'am? Are you safe? Can you—" The call cut off as the phone battery died. Naomi stared at the blank screen in despair. Had they received enough information to find her? And even if they had, would they arrive in time? The standoff between the bears continued, a symphony of growls and threatening postures. The female hadn't yielded her position protecting Naomi, which both touched and terrified her. Why was this wild animal putting itself at risk for a human? As the first light of dawn began to filter through the trees, illuminating the snow-covered landscape, Naomi noticed something strange about the male bear. There was something unnatural about the way it moved, something almost mechanical. And now that she could see better in the growing light, she noticed a small red dot blinking on its neck. Understanding dawned on her with a mixture of relief and new concern. It wasn't a real bear at all. It was one of the Wildlife Research Institute's tracking robots, designed to study bear behavior without human intervention. The realistic exterior fooled animals and kept researchers safe during observation. But something had clearly gone wrong with its programming for it to be acting so aggressively. The female bear, however, believed the threat was real, and an 8-foot robot with metal claws designed to climb trees could do serious damage even without intending to. Naomi had heard about these machines, but had never seen one in action. If she could just reach the emergency shutdown switch that should be located at the base of its neck, but that would mean getting past her protective bear and approaching what appeared to be an aggressive male grizzly. It was madness. Yet as the robot bear took another step forward, its movements jerky but threatening, Naomi knew she had to try something. "I have to stop this," she murmured, struggling to her feet. Her legs nearly buckled beneath her, still weak from her ordeal, but adrenaline gave her strength. "Easy, girl," she said to the female bear, not knowing if the animal could understand her tone, but hoping her non-threatening posture would communicate her intentions. The female bear glanced at her, clearly confused by the human's decision to stand rather than stay safely behind her. Naomi took a cautious step forward, then another, moving slowly around the bear that had saved her life. "I know what this is," she called out, both to steady herself and on the off chance that the robot had voice recognition capabilities that might trigger a shutdown. Wildlife Research Institute Bear Tracker, Beta Model, Emergency Stop Protocol. The robot continued its aggressive display, unresponsive to her words. The red light on its neck blinked faster now, perhaps indicating some malfunction. The female bear growled, clearly agitated by Naomi's movement toward the perceived threat. Naomi took another step forward, her hands raised in what she hoped was a non-threatening gesture to her protective bear while keeping her eyes on the robot. Just a few more steps, and she might be able to reach the emergency shutdown button. A sudden crashing sound from the forest to her right made everyone, woman, bear, and robot, freeze. Through the trees came the beam of a powerful flashlight, followed by the welcome sight of two park rangers in heavy winter gear, accompanied by a man in a technical-looking jacket emblazoned with the Wildlife Research Institute logo. "Don't move," one of the rangers called, raising what appeared to be a tranquilizer gun. "Wait!" Naomi shouted back, her voice stronger than she expected. "The female is protecting me. She saved my life. And that other one is your robot. It's malfunctioning." The tech specialist stepped forward, a remote control in his hands. "Model 87B, Emergency Override, Authorization Delta 96. The robot bear immediately powered down, its aggressive posture melting away as it slumped slightly. The female bear, sensing the change, appeared confused but remained protective, staying close to Naomi. "Ma'am, we need you to move away from that bear very slowly," the second ranger said, his tranquilizer gun trained on the female Grizzly. "She won't hurt me," Naomi replied, though she couldn't be certain of this. After all, wild animals remained unpredictable no matter how seemingly gentle. "She kept me warm all night. I would have died without her." The rangers exchanged skeptical glances, but the tech specialist looked intrigued. "That's unprecedented behavior," he said. "We've been tracking this female, Subject 247, for 3 years now. She's always been particularly shy around humans. Well, she made an exception for me," Naomi said, feeling a strange bond with the massive creature that still stood protectively nearby. "Please don't hurt her." "We'll need to sedate her for safety," the first ranger said. "But we won't harm her. This is actually an incredible research opportunity. A wild grizzly displaying protective behavior toward a human is practically unheard of." Naomi nodded reluctantly, understanding the necessity but feeling oddly sad about the idea of seeing the bear unconscious. "Just give me a moment," she requested. Turning to the grizzly, she spoke softly, knowing the animal couldn't understand her words but hoping her tone would convey her gratitude. "Thank you for saving my life. I won't forget you." The bear regarded her with those deep, intelligent eyes, and for a moment, Naomi felt as if the creature truly understood her. Then the dart from the tranquilizer gun hit its mark, and the bear let out a confused grunt before gradually lowering itself to the ground as the sedative took effect. As the rangers approached to check on Naomi, she felt tears welling in her eyes, partly from relief at being rescued, but mostly from a profound sense of connection with the wild animal that had defied all natural instincts to protect a human in need. Little did she know, this encounter was only the beginning of a story far more extraordinary than she could have imagined. 3 days later, Naomi sat in the small hospital room in the town of Whitefish, just outside Glacier National Park. The doctors had treated her for moderate hypothermia and dehydration, but overall, she had been incredibly lucky. No frostbite. No permanent damage. The same couldn't be said for her expensive camera equipment, which the Rangers had recovered but was likely beyond repair. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Dr. Marcus Whitley entered, a tall man with salt-and-pepper hair and a weathered face that spoke of years spent outdoors. He'd introduced himself the previous day as the lead biologist for the Glacier National Park Wildlife Research Institute. "How are you feeling today, Miss Chen?" he asked, pulling up a chair beside her bed. "Much better," Naomi replied. "They're talking about discharging me tomorrow." "Good, good." Dr. Whitley nodded, but his expression remained serious. "I've been studying the data from our tracking collar on Subject 247, the female grizzly that protected you. I've never seen anything like it in 30 years of bear research." Naomi leaned forward, intrigued. "What do you mean?" "Bears don't behave like that," he said, opening a laptop he'd brought with him. "Especially not grizzlies. They're solitary by nature, territorial. They avoid humans when possible and certainly don't provide body heat to keep them alive." He turned the screen toward her, showing a map with a blinking red dot. "This is her current location. She's been circling the same area for the past 3 days, ever since we relocated her." The dot was moving in a pattern around what appeared to be the trail where Naomi had collapsed. "She's looking for you," Dr. Whitley said quietly. A chill that had nothing to do with her recent hypothermia ran down Naomi's spine. "That's not possible. I would have said the same thing before seeing the footage from our field cameras." He clicked on a video file. The grainy night vision footage showed the sedated bear being transported to a new location deep in the wilderness, miles from any hiking trails. The video jumped forward several hours to show the bear waking up, shaking her massive head in confusion. Instead of wandering off to find food as expected, she began sniffing the air, then the ground, moving in an increasingly frantic pattern. "She's trying to pick up your scent," Dr. Whitley explained, "and here's where it gets truly bizarre." The video showed the bear standing on her hind legs, looking around as if orienting herself, then dropping to all fours and beginning to walk with purpose, directly toward the area where Naomi had been found. "She's traveled 23 miles in 3 days, navigating rough terrain, crossing 2 rivers, all to return to the exact spot where you were. This morning, she was recorded digging in the snow where you lay." Naomi stared at the screen, a mixture of wonder and disbelief washing over her. Why would she do that? Dr. Whitley shook his head. "That's what I was hoping you might help us understand. Has anything unusual happened during your previous visits to the park? Any prior encounters with wildlife that seemed atypical?" Naomi thought back to her many photography expeditions in Glacier. "Nothing like this. I've photographed bears from a distance, of course, but always with proper safety protocols. Never had a close encounter until now." The biologist tapped his fingers thoughtfully on the edge of the laptop. "There's something else. The robot bear that malfunctioned. It wasn't a random occurrence. Someone hacked its control systems, deliberately sending it to your location." "What?" Naomi sat up straighter, wincing slightly at the lingering stiffness in her muscles. "Who would do that? And how would they even know where I was? That's what park security is trying to determine." The hack was sophisticated, bounced through multiple servers to hide the origin. He paused, studying her face. "Do you have any enemies, Miss Chen? Anyone who might wish you harm?" The question struck Naomi as absurd until she remembered her most recent photography assignment. "I don't think so, but last month I was documenting illegal logging operations at the edge of protected forest land in Oregon. My photos were used as evidence in a case against Northwest Timber Corporation. They're facing millions in fines. Dr. Whitley's expression darkened. That might explain it, but it doesn't explain the bear's behavior. He closed the laptop. I have a proposition for you, Ms. Chen. Once you're discharged, would you be willing to participate in a controlled experiment? What kind of experiment? We want to see how Subject 247 reacts to your presence again. Under carefully monitored conditions, of course. Complete safety protocols, tranquilizer teams on standby. Naomi hesitated. Part of her was intensely curious about the bear that had saved her life, but another part recognized the danger of seeking a second encounter with a wild predator. I'm not sure that's wise, Dr. Whitley. It could provide invaluable data for bear conservation and human-wildlife interaction studies. Plus, he added, it might be the only way to help her. She's not eating, not following normal behavior patterns. If this continues, she won't survive the winter. That statement hit Naomi hard. The thought that the bear might be risking its own survival because of her was unbearable. When would this experiment take place? Tomorrow, if you're discharged. We've set up a secure observation area near where she's been circling. You would be behind reinforced glass, completely safe. Naomi took a deep breath. All right, I'll do it. Dr. Whitley nodded, looking relieved. Thank you, Ms. Chen. This could be groundbreaking research. After he left, Naomi stared out the window at the snow-covered mountains in the distance. What had happened out there between her and that bear? And why would someone try to harm her using a robot designed for wildlife research? The questions swirled in her mind, as unsettled as the snowflakes that had fallen around her during that fateful hike. The next morning, Naomi was discharged with a clean bill of health and strict instructions to avoid strenuous activity for at least a week. Dr. Whitley picked her up in a Wildlife Research Institute SUV, accompanied by a younger woman he introduced as Layla Khoury, a graduate student specializing in ursine behavior. It's an honor to meet you, Ms. Chen, Layla said enthusiastically as they drove toward the park. Your case study is already being discussed in research circles across the country. I'm not sure how I feel about being a case study, Naomi replied with a wry smile. Sorry, Layla looked embarrassed. It's just that nothing like this has been documented before. A grizzly bear providing life-saving warmth to a human? It contradicts everything we know about wild bear behavior. The research facility was a modern building, nestled discreetly among the trees near the park's northern boundary. Inside, a team of scientists and rangers were gathered around monitors displaying various camera feeds from the surrounding forest. Subject 247 is still in the target area, a technician reported as they entered. Vital signs show elevated heart rate but otherwise normal function. Dr. Whitley led Naomi to a room with one wall made entirely of one-way glass, looking out into a small clearing in the forest. She's out there, about 100 yards away. When we are ready, we'll use recorded sounds to draw her to this location. And I just stand here? Naomi asked, suddenly feeling like bait. Exactly. We want to observe her reaction to seeing you again. If she shows any aggressive behavior, you'll be completely safe behind this glass. Naomi nodded, trying to quell the butterflies in her stomach. She wasn't sure what she was more afraid of, that the bear would try to attack her, or that it would show no recognition at all. We're ready when you are, Doctor, Whitley said, giving her shoulder a reassuring squeeze before stepping back to join his team at the monitoring station. Naomi took her position near the glass. A speaker outside emitted a series of low tones, designed to mimic sounds that would attract a curious bear without alarming it. Minutes passed, and Naomi found herself holding her breath. Then, movement at the edge of the clearing caught her eye. A massive shape emerged from between the trees, its brown fur standing out against the white snow. Subject 247, her bear, had arrived. The grizzly moved cautiously into the clearing, nose raised to test the air. When she reached the center of the open space, she stopped, standing perfectly still except for her head, which turned slowly as she surveyed her surroundings. "Remarkable," Dr. Whitley murmured from behind Naomi. "She's displaying searching behavior, not foraging or territorial assessment." The bear rose onto her hind legs, towering at over 7 feet tall, her focus seeming to zero in on the observation window. Could she sense Naomi's presence behind the glass? "Miss Chen," Dr. Whitley said quietly, "would you mind speaking?" Just a few words. Naomi cleared her throat. "Hello there," she said, her voice amplified slightly by a microphone that carried it outside. "Remember me?" The effect was immediate and astonishing. The bear dropped to all fours and charged toward the window, moving with startling speed for such a large animal. Several researchers gasped, and Naomi instinctively took a step back, even knowing the glass was designed to withstand much greater impacts than a bear collision. But the grizzly stopped short, just feet from the window. She raised a massive paw and placed it against the glass, tilting her head as if confused by the barrier. There was no aggression in the movement, just recognition. "My God," Dr. Whitley breathed. "She recognizes your voice." Naomi stepped forward again, drawn by some inexplicable connection. She raised her own hand and placed it against the glass, directly opposite the bear's paw. The size difference was staggering. Her entire hand was dwarfed by a single pad of the bear's paw. "It's okay," she found herself saying. "I'm okay, thanks to you." The bear let out a low rumble that vibrated through the glass. Then, to everyone's astonishment, she sat back on her haunches, maintaining her position just feet from the window, her eyes fixed on Naomi. "I've never seen anything like this," Layla whispered, furiously taking notes. "This isn't just recognition, it's communication." Dr. Whitley moved to Naomi's side. "We need to try something else. Would you be willing to step outside? With proper safety measures, of course." "Outside?" Naomi echoed, her mouth suddenly dry. "With her? You'd be behind an electric fence barrier, invisible but highly effective. And we have tranquilizer teams positioned all around. If she makes any threatening move, she'll be sedated immediately." Naomi looked back at the bear, still sitting patiently outside the window. Those eyes, there was something in them she couldn't explain, something that seemed to transcend the natural barrier between human and wild animal. "All right," she heard herself say. "Let's try it." The preparation was meticulous. Naomi was fitted with a protective vest and given an emergency transmitter. Dr. Whitley explained the protocol 3 times to ensure she understood. Any sign of aggression from the bear, she was to press the button and immediately back toward the facility door. When everything was ready, Naomi stepped through a side door into the clearing. The electric barrier was invisible, but she could feel the slight hum of electricity in the air. The bear immediately turned toward her, rising again to her full height. "Subject 247 is showing interest but no signs of aggression," Dr. Whitley's voice came through an earpiece. "Heart rate elevated, but within normal parameters." The bear dropped back to all fours and approached the barrier, stopping just short of where the invisible fence would deliver its deterrent shock. She sniffed the air intently, her eyes never leaving Naomi. "Hello again," Naomi said softly. "Thank you for keeping me warm out there." The bear made a chuffing sound, almost like a greeting. Then, slowly, deliberately, she lay down in the snow, her massive body stretched out along the line of the invisible fence, as close to Naomi as she could get without crossing the barrier. It was exactly the position she had taken that night on the mountain: protective, warming, sheltering. "This is unprecedented." Dr. Whitley's voice was tight with excitement in Naomi's ear. "She's displaying the same nurturing behavior from your encounter. Can you try moving to your left? Let's see if she follows." Naomi took several steps to her left, parallel to the barrier. The bear immediately stood and moved along with her, maintaining the same relative position. When Naomi stopped, the bear again lay down. "It's like she's still trying to protect you," Layla's voice chimed in. "But from what?" As if in answer to her question, a sharp crack echoed through the trees. The bear was on her feet in an instant, a warning growl rumbling from deep in her chest as she positioned herself between Naomi and the direction of the sound. "What was that?" Naomi asked, suddenly tense. "Not sure," Dr. Whitley replied. "Security team is investigating. Ms. Chen, I think we should bring you back inside until—" Another crack, louder this time. Then a sound that made Naomi's blood run cold, the distinctive report of a high-powered rifle. "Active threat," someone shouted through the earpiece. "Get her inside now." But it was too late. A sharp pain exploded in Naomi's shoulder, spinning her around with the impact. She looked down in shock to see a dart, not a bullet, protruding from her protective vest. Her last conscious thought before the powerful tranquilizer took effect was of the bear roaring in fury, charging the invisible fence barrier despite the painful shock it would deliver. Then darkness claimed her once again. Naomi awoke to the steady beep of medical equipment and the murmur of urgent voices. Her vision swam into focus, revealing the same hospital room she had just left that morning. "She's awake," a nurse called out, and moments later, Dr. Whitley appeared at her bedside, his face drawn with concern. "Ms. Chen, how do you feel?" Naomi struggled to find her voice. "Groggy. What happened?" "Someone breached our security perimeter. Hit you with a tranquilizer dart meant for large mammals. Could have been lethal if it hadn't caught in your protective vest, reducing the dose you received." He ran a hand through his hair, looking exhausted. It was a professional job. They knew exactly where we'd be and when. "The bear?" Naomi asked, suddenly remembering the roar of fury she'd heard before losing consciousness. Dr. Whitley's expression shifted, becoming harder to read. "That's complicated. She broke through the electric fence, took multiple shocks but didn't stop. By the time security reached you, she was standing over your unconscious body, preventing anyone from approaching. Took 3 tranquilizer darts to sedate her." Naomi tried to process this information. "She was protecting me again." "Undeniably. The security footage is remarkable. She created a defensive perimeter around you, displaying behavior typically only seen in mother bears defending cubs." He shook his head in wonder. "We've never documented anything remotely like this between a wild bear and a human." "Where is she now?" "Back in containment at the research facility. The incident has attracted attention from higher-ups. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has sent a team to investigate. This goes beyond unusual behavior into something we can't explain through standard wildlife behavioral models." Naomi tried to sit up, grimacing as her body protested the movement. The tranquilizer's effects were still lingering in her system. "Someone tried to shoot me. Twice in 1 week. I think I deserve some answers about what's going on." Dr. Whitley checked that the hospital room door was closed before leaning closer. "The FBI is involved now. They tracked the hacker who reprogrammed our robot bear. It leads back to a shell company with ties to Northwest Timber Corporation." Naomi felt a chill. Her photographs documenting their illegal logging had apparently made her a target. So they're trying to kill me to prevent further testimony. That's the theory. But it doesn't explain the bear's behavior. He hesitated. There's something else. Something I haven't told the authorities yet because, frankly, it sounds too bizarre. What is it? Subject 247, your bear. She has a microchip embedded near her brainstem. It's not one of ours. It's not any wildlife tracking technology I've ever seen. Naomi stared at him. What are you saying? I'm saying someone experimented on this bear. The technology is advanced, beyond anything in current commercial use. It appears to be some kind of neural interface. He lowered his voice further. And it activated the night she found you. The implications were staggering. Are you suggesting some kind of controlled behavior? Mind control? No, not exactly. The chip doesn't seem designed to control, more to enhance existing neural pathways, to amplify certain responses, perhaps. But here's the truly strange part. It contains programming we can't decipher, and it seems to have imprinted on you somehow. Naomi tried to absorb this information, but it seemed too fantastic. A bear with an experimental neural chip that had somehow formed a bond with her? It sounded like the plot of a science fiction novel, not something that could happen in real life. Who would do this? Why? Dr. Whitley spread his hands. That's what we need to find out. And quickly, before whoever is behind this makes another attempt on your life, or decides that Subject 247 has become a liability. The thought of the bear being in danger because of her sent a surge of protective instinct through Naomi. After all, the animal had saved her life twice now. What can we do? Once you're discharged, again, I want to bring you to a secure facility. We have a team ready to examine the chip more thoroughly, but we need you there. The bear's neural patterns change when you're present. It might be the key to understanding what we're dealing with. Naomi nodded slowly. I'll do whatever it takes to help her, and to find out who's behind this. Dr. Whitley stood. Rest now. I've arranged for security outside your door. No one gets in without proper clearance. After he left, Naomi stared out the window at the darkening sky. The mystery had deepened, taking a turn she could never have anticipated. Somewhere out there was a person or organization experimenting with advanced neural technology on wildlife, and they were willing to kill to keep it secret. And somewhere closer, a bear with an inexplicable connection to her was waiting, their fates now intertwined in ways neither human nor animal could have imagined. 3 days later, Naomi stood in a state-of-the-art laboratory hidden within a nondescript government building in Helena, Montana. Subject 247, whom Naomi had started mentally calling Guardian, though she kept this to herself, was visible through a reinforced observation window, lying calmly on a specially constructed platform while the scientists monitored her vital signs. The sedative will wear off soon. Dr. Eleanor Patel, a neuroscientist brought in by the FBI, explained as she studied a series of brain scans displayed on a large monitor. Then we'll be able to observe her cognitive responses in real time. Dr. Whitley joined them, accompanied by Agent Teresa Martinez, the FBI investigator assigned to the case. Northwest Timber's CEO and 3 executives were arrested this morning, Martinez informed them. We found evidence linking them to both attacks on Ms. Chen, as well as financial transactions with a biotech firm called Synaptics. Synaptics? Dr. Patel looked up sharply. They were a DARPA contractor until 2 years ago, specialized in neural interface technology for military applications. That tracks with what we're seeing in the implant, a technician called from another workstation. The architecture has similarities to military-grade neural enhancements, but with significant modifications for ursine brain structure. Naomi tried to follow the technical discussion, but much of it went over her head. What she understood clearly, however, was that someone had used Guardian as an unwitting test subject for experimental technology, and that made her blood boil. "Can you remove it?" she asked. "The chip, I mean, is it harming her?" Dr. Patel hesitated. "It's not that simple. The implant has integrated with her neural pathways. Removing it could cause severe brain damage or even death at this point. But keeping it in there, isn't that just continuing the experiment without consent?" "It's an ethical quandary," Dr. Whitley acknowledged. "But for now, our priority is understanding exactly what the device does and why it created this connection between you two." Through the window, Guardian began to stir, her massive body shifting as the sedation wore off. Her eyes opened, immediately scanning the room until they locked onto Naomi through the glass. The bear's reaction was immediate. She rose to her feet, moving directly to the window separating them. "Look at the neural activity," Dr. Patel breathed, gesturing to the monitors. "It's spiking in the recognition and bonding centers, similar to what we'd see in a parent recognizing their child." "That's not possible," Agent Martinez stated flatly. "Bears don't form bonds with humans. They're wild animals." "And yet," Dr. Whitley gestured toward the window, where Guardian had placed her paw against the glass, just as she had done at the previous facility. Without thinking, Naomi stepped forward and placed her hand against the glass opposite the bear's paw. The monitors recording Guardian's brain activity lit up with activity. "The implant is enhancing natural empathy pathways," Dr. Patel said, studying the data. "But that doesn't explain the specificity of her attachment to Ms. Chen." A technician who had been quietly working at a computer terminal looked up suddenly. "I think I found something. There's a dormant subroutine in the implant's code that activated the night Ms. Chen collapsed. It seems to be triggered by human distress signals, specifically the biochemical markers released during hypothermia." "So the implant detected that I was freezing to death?" Naomi asked. "Precisely. And it overrode the bear's natural instincts, compelling her to provide warmth and protection." The technician continued scrolling through data. "But here's the interesting part. Once activated, the implant established what can only be described as an imprinting protocol. It essentially rewired certain neural pathways to create a permanent protective bond. They created a guardian animal," Agent Martinez said slowly. "A wild predator programmed to protect humans in distress." Dr. Whitley frowned. "But why? What would be the purpose?" The room fell silent as they all considered the implications. Finally, Dr. Patel spoke. "Search and rescue, perhaps? Imagine wilderness rescuers with bear companions who could reach victims in terrain too dangerous for humans, provide warmth in extreme conditions. Or military applications," Agent Martinez suggested grimly. "Bears trained to protect downed pilots behind enemy lines, or to defend specific personnel in remote locations." Naomi looked at Guardian, still standing patiently at the window, her eyes fixed on Naomi with what could only be described as devotion. "So, what happens now? To her, I mean." "That's being debated at levels well above mine," Agent Martinez admitted. "The technology is classified, the ethics unprecedented. For now, she'll remain in protective custody while the investigation continues." "And what about me?" Naomi asked. "Am I still in danger?" "We believe we've identified all parties involved in the attacks, but we can't be certain. I'd recommend remaining under protection until the case is closed." Dr. Whitley cleared his throat. "There's another consideration. The bond works both ways. Separating them completely could have negative effects on the bear's health and behavior. Are you suggesting Ms. Chen should— What? Keep a grizzly bear as a pet? Agent Martinez asked incredulously. No, of course not. But perhaps a controlled interaction protocol. Regular visits to maintain the bond while we study the long-term effects of the implant. Naomi found herself nodding. I'd be willing to do that. She saved my life twice. I owe her that much. As if understanding the discussion, Guardian made a soft chuffing sound, pressing her paw more firmly against the glass. The monitors showed another spike in her neural activity. I think, Dr. Patel said quietly, we are witnessing something truly extraordinary here. A bridge between species created by technology, yes, but sustained by something much more fundamental. Whatever Synaptics intended, they've created a connection that goes beyond their programming. Naomi met Guardian's eyes through the glass. Despite everything that had happened, the danger, the confusion, the unwanted spotlight, she felt an undeniable bond with this magnificent creature. A bond that transcended the natural order and opened questions about the very nature of connection between species. In that moment, standing before the bear that had twice risked her life to save Naomi's, she made a silent promise. Whatever happened next, she would ensure Guardian's protection, just as Guardian had protected her. Outside the facility, snow began to fall again, covering the Montana landscape in a fresh blanket of white, a reminder of where their strange journey had begun, in the cold wilderness where a woman had collapsed and a bear had made an impossible choice. 2 weeks later, Naomi sat in a small cabin on the outskirts of the research facility, a mug of a hot coffee warming her hands as she stared out at the pristine, snow-covered forest. The FBI had established this as her safe house while the investigation continued, close enough to maintain her regular visits with Guardian, but secluded enough to keep her away from prying eyes. The media had gotten wind of the story despite everyone's best efforts at containment. Wildlife photographer forms miraculous bond with grizzly rescuer, read one headline. Bear guardian angel, miracle in Montana, proclaimed another. Most portrayed it as a heartwarming tale of animal compassion, missing entirely the darker truth of experimental neural technology and corporate assassination attempts. A knock at the door drew Naomi from her thoughts. She checked the security monitor, a necessary precaution these days, and saw Dr. Whitley stamping snow from his boots on the porch. She buzzed him in, the electronic locks disengaging with a soft click. "Morning," he greeted, unwinding a scarf from his neck. His breath still clouded in the cabin's interior, which Naomi kept cooler than most would find comfortable. Her time with Guardian had left her with an increased tolerance for cold. "How are you settling in?" "Well enough," Naomi replied, pouring him a cup of coffee. "Any news?" Dr. Whitley accepted the mug gratefully, warming his hands around it before speaking. "Several developments, actually, some concerning." He pulled a tablet from his bag and placed it on the kitchen table. "First, the good news. Guardian is thriving under the new protocol. Her vitals are strong, feeding patterns normal, and the neural patterns have stabilized since we began your regular interaction sessions." "And the bad news?" Naomi asked, sensing there was more. "The investigation into Synaptics has hit some roadblocks. Key researchers have disappeared, gone off-grid completely, and most of their research data was scrubbed from servers before the FBI could secure it." He swiped through several screens on the tablet. "But our team managed to recover fragments, including this." He turned the tablet toward Naomi. On the screen was a map with dozens of blinking red dots scattered across the northern United States and Canada. "What am I looking at?" "Implant signatures," Dr. Whitley said grimly. "Guardian isn't the only bear they've chipped. Based on this data, we estimate Synaptics has implanted at least 47 grizzlies and black bears across the northern wilderness areas. Naomi felt her stomach drop. 47? All with the same technology? Similar, but not identical. The code we extracted suggests they were testing different variations of the implant, different parameters, different trigger conditions. He swiped to another screen showing complex neural mapping diagrams. Some were designed to activate based on specific human pheromones, others on vocal patterns or body temperature thresholds. They were running a wide-scale field experiment using wild bears as unwitting test subjects. Naomi struggled for words. That's monstrous. It gets worse. Dr. Whitley's expression grew more troubled. We've identified 3 cases in the past year where lost hikers reported being guided to safety by bears that showed unusually non-aggressive behavior, all in areas where these implanted bears were released. Naomi set down her coffee, her hand trembling slightly. They were testing the rescue protocols, using actual people in danger. It appears so, creating real-world scenarios to see if the implants functioned as designed. He hesitated. But there's another element we're concerned about. Some of the implant variations contain what appear to be dormant aggression triggers. What does that mean? It means some of these bears could potentially be activated to attack specific targets rather than protect them. The same technology that compelled Guardian to save you could, with different programming, be used to create a weapon. The implications struck Naomi like a physical blow. A deniable assassination tool, a grizzly attack would be assumed to be natural, tragic, but not suspicious. Exactly. The perfect cover for elimination of targets in wilderness areas. Dr. Whitley ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Naomi had come to recognize as a sign of his deep agitation. We are working with wildlife services across multiple states and Canada to locate and contain the implanted bears, but it's slow going. These are vast wilderness areas and winter's making tracking difficult. Naomi stood, pacing across the cabin's small living area. How does this connect to Northwest Timber? Were they just trying to silence me about the logging? Or were they involved with Synaptics directly? That's where it gets interesting. We found financial records showing that Northwest Timber's parent company, Meridian Holdings, was a major investor in Synaptics. So your photographs didn't just threaten their logging operations. They potentially threatened to expose this entire experimental program if investigations dug too deeply into their corporate structure. Naomi stopped at the window, looking out at the snow-covered forest. Somewhere out there were bears carrying unwanted technology in their brains. Technology that could override their natural instincts and behaviors. The violation of it made her chest tight with anger. What about Guardian? Is she still in danger? We've secured her in a specialized containment facility. Her implant appears to be stable, without the aggression triggers we've identified in some of the others. He paused. But there's something else you should know. The imprinting process, the bond she formed with you, it's stronger than we initially understood. Dr. Patel's latest scans show that the neural pathways are continuing to develop and strengthen, even beyond the implant's designed parameters. Meaning what, exactly? Meaning that whatever Synaptics engineered, it's evolving. The connection between you two is becoming more complex, more integrated than they likely intended. He looked at her carefully. Have you noticed anything unusual? Changes in your own behavior or perceptions? The question caught Naomi off guard. She'd been so focused on Guardian's well-being that she hadn't really considered changes within herself. But now that he mentioned it, I've been having dreams, she admitted quietly. Vivid ones. I'm moving through the forest on all fours, smelling things I've never smelled before, seeing in ways that don't seem human. Dr. Whitley's expression tightened with concern. How long has this been happening? Since about a week after the first encounter. I thought it was just psychological, trauma-induced dreams or something, but they're becoming more frequent, more detailed. She wrapped her arms around herself. Last night, I dreamed I was catching fish in a stream with paws. I could taste the raw fish, feel the cold water on my fur. It felt completely real. Dr. Whitley was already typing notes into his tablet. This is unprecedented. The implant shouldn't have any mechanism to create a reverse connection. There's nothing physically linking you to Guardian. Unless there is, Naomi said slowly, a new thought occurring to her. The tranquilizer dart that hit me during the second attack, you said it was meant for large mammals. What if it contained something more than just sedatives? Dr. Whitley looked up sharply. Nanotechnology? It's possible, but that would be decades beyond current commercial capabilities. So is neural implant technology that can create cross-species bonding, Naomi pointed out. We need to have my blood tested again, more thoroughly this time. I'll arrange it immediately. He stood, already reaching for his phone. In the meantime, I want you to document these dreams, every detail you can remember. And if you experience anything else unusual, sensory changes, instincts that don't feel like your own, report it right away. After Dr. Whitley left, Naomi returned to the window, watching as fresh snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in quiet white. She closed her eyes, and for a brief moment she could swear she smelled not just the snow, but the individual scents of pine, deer that had passed through the yard hours ago, the distant musk of a fox, all impossibly distinct, impossibly clear. When she opened her eyes, the sensation faded, but a certainty remained. Something was happening to her, something that transcended the normal boundaries between human and animal consciousness. And somewhere, in a secure facility nearby, a bear named Guardian was perhaps experiencing the same bewildering transformation from the opposite direction. The blood tests confirmed Dr. Whitley's worst fears. Microscopic biotech particles were found in Naomi's bloodstream, advanced technology designed to create a reciprocal neural interface with Guardian's implant. The tranquilizer dart had indeed contained more than sedatives. It had delivered a payload of experimental nanotechnology directly into her system. It's elegant in a disturbing way, Dr. Patel explained during an emergency meeting at the research facility. The nanoparticles have attached themselves to specific neurons in your brain, creating a wireless bridge to Guardian's implant. It's like they've established a rudimentary shared consciousness. Naomi sat in stunned silence, trying to process the implications. Can you remove them? Dr. Patel shook her head. Not without risking significant neural damage. These particles have integrated with your brain structure. They're part of you now, just as the implant is part of Guardian. Agent Martinez, who had been quietly listening, finally spoke. This was intentional then. Not an assassination attempt at all, but the next phase of the experiment. It appears so, Doctor. Whitley agreed. They weren't trying to kill Ms. Chen. They were making her the first human subject in a two-way cross-species neural connection experiment. But why me? Naomi asked, the question that had been haunting her for weeks now, finally giving voice to itself. Why not use one of their own researchers? Plausible deniability, perhaps, Agent Martinez suggested. If something went catastrophically wrong, you'd be seen as an innocent victim of a bear attack or wilderness accident, not connected to their research. Or, Dr. Patel offered an alternative theory. They needed someone with a specific neural profile. your brain chemistry might have certain characteristics that made you an ideal candidate for this connection. That thought chilled Naomi even more than the idea of being a random target. The notion that something in her innate biology had made her suitable for this experiment felt like an even deeper violation. "So, what happens now?" she asked. "Will these dreams and sensory experiences get stronger?" Dr. Patel looked troubled. "Based on the progression we're seeing, yes. The neural bridge is strengthening. You'll likely experience more vivid crossover effects. Sensory perceptions, emotional states, possibly even instinctual drives from Guardian's consciousness." "And what about her? Is she experiencing human thoughts? My memories?" "The evidence suggests she is. Her brain scans show activation in regions not typically active in ursine cognition, areas analogous to those associated with abstract thinking and complex emotional processing in humans. She's exhibiting behaviors that indicate a growing comprehension of human concepts." Agent Martinez leaned forward. "This is becoming a matter of national security. If Synaptics has developed technology that allows cross-species consciousness sharing, the implications extend far beyond search and rescue applications." Naomi understood the implications all too well. Military applications, espionage. The ability to place human consciousness partially within animal bodies could revolutionize warfare and surveillance in ways that seemed pulled from science fiction. "I need to see her," Naomi said suddenly. "Not through glass. Directly." The scientists exchanged concerned glances. "That would be extremely risky," Dr. Whitley cautioned. "Despite the bond, she's still a wild predator with enormous physical strength." "The bond is precisely why it would work," Naomi insisted. "I can feel it. She won't harm me. And if we want to understand what's happening to both of us, we need to allow the connection to establish fully under controlled conditions." After much debate and preparation, a secure interaction space was arranged. Unlike previous observation areas with barriers, this was an open room with reinforced walls and multiple emergency exits, but no physical separation between human and bear. Tranquilizer teams stood ready behind one-way glass, prepared to intervene at the first sign of danger. Naomi stood in the center of the room, her heart pounding, but her resolve firm. A heavy door on the opposite wall slid open, and Guardian padded into the space, her massive form moving with surprising grace for a creature of such size. The bear stopped several yards from Naomi, lifting her head to scent the air. Their eyes met, and Naomi felt a jolt of recognition that went beyond normal perception. It was as if some part of her consciousness existed behind those brown eyes, just as some essence of the bear now resided within her own mind. "Hello, Guardian," she said softly. The bear made a low chuffing sound, then did something that caused gasps from the observation team. She lowered her massive body to the ground in a submissive posture, head down, a clear signal of non-aggression and recognition of Naomi's presence. Slowly, telegraphing each movement, Naomi approached. When she was just an arm's length away, she stopped, extended her hand, and waited. Guardian raised her head and gently, with incredible control of her massive muzzle, pressed her nose against Naomi's palm. The contact sent a cascade of sensations through Naomi's mind. Not just physical touch, but flashes of perception that weren't her own. The sharp clarity of sense, the awareness of every subtle air current in the room, the heightened sensitivity to vibrations through the floor. For a moment, she experienced the world through Guardian senses, a rich tapestry of information humans could barely comprehend. And in that same moment she felt Guardian processing human concepts, abstract understanding of safety, connection, the complex web of human relationships that had brought them to this point. The bear was grappling with ideas far beyond normal ursine cognition, stretching her mind into new territories of understanding. "They're communicating on a neural level," Dr. Patel whispered in the observation room. "The implant and nanotech are creating a real-time exchange of sensory data and cognitive processes." Naomi slowly knelt before the bear, maintaining eye contact. Guardian remained perfectly still, watching her with eyes that seemed to hold a depth of understanding no wild animal should possess. "We're connected now," Naomi said softly, knowing on some level that Guardian could understand the concept if not the exact words. "Both changed by what they did to us, but we'll figure this out together." As if in response, Guardian did something truly extraordinary. She raised her paw, not to strike, but with deliberate control, and extended it toward Naomi in a gesture that unmistakably mimicked a human handshake. The observation room erupted in astonished exclamations. This was not natural bear behavior. This was learned human behavior, executed with clear intent and understanding. Naomi reached out and gently clasped the offered paw, feeling the rough pads and incredible strength held carefully in check. "Partners," she said, her voice thick with emotion. A sudden, sharp pain lanced through Naomi's head, causing her to wince and close her eyes. When she opened them again, her perspective had changed dramatically. The world appeared in muted colors, but with incredible detail and depth. Scents bombarded her consciousness. The antiseptic smell of the facility, the unique identifiers of each human behind the glass, the lingering traces of every person who had walked through the room in the past day. She looked down and saw not her own hands, but massive paws resting on the floor. She could feel the weight of her body, Guardian's body, distributed on 4 powerful limbs, the sensation of fur covering her skin, the different balance and posture of a quadrupedal form. Panic threatened to overwhelm her until she realized that she still had awareness of her human body too. She could feel herself kneeling on the floor, her hand still touching Guardian's paw. But somehow, impossibly, she was experiencing both perspectives simultaneously, occupying 2 bodies at once. And in that same moment she could sense Guardian experiencing the novel sensation of human form, the strange balance of upright posture, the dexterity of fingers, the more limited but differently focused sensory input of human perception. The moment passed as quickly as it had come, leaving Naomi gasping for breath as she returned fully to her own body. Guardian shook her massive head as if clearing it, then looked at Naomi with what could only be described as wonder. "Did you see that?" Dr. Whitley demanded through the communication system. "Pupillary synchronization, simultaneous autonomic responses. They were in some kind of shared consciousness state." Naomi stood shakily, never breaking eye contact with Guardian. "It's more than a neural bridge," she called back to the observation team. "We can trade places or share spaces. I just experienced being her, while still being me." The implications were staggering. Not just communication between species, but actual consciousness sharing. The ability to experience life as another being while maintaining one's own identity. It was something humans had imagined in spiritual practices and science fiction, but never achieved in reality until now. "This changes everything," Dr. Patel said, her voice filled with awe and not a little fear. Indeed it did, for Naomi and Guardian, for science, and for the very understanding of consciousness itself. But as Naomi looked into the bear's eyes that now held a spark of human comprehension alongside wild animal instinct, she felt something else beyond the wonder and confusion. Determination. Whoever had done this to them hadn't considered that creating a bridge between minds might result in a partnership stronger than either alone. With Guardian's raw power and instincts combined with Naomi's human intelligence and determination, they weren't just subjects in an experiment. They were something new, something unprecedented, and they would use that connection to find the people responsible and ensure no other animals were exploited in this way again. As if sensing her thoughts, and perhaps she truly was, Guardian made a soft rumbling sound of agreement. The hunt was about to begin, and their targets had no idea what was coming for them. The next 3 weeks transformed Naomi's understanding of consciousness, communication, and the boundaries between species. With each carefully monitored interaction session, the neural bridge between her and Guardian strengthened, allowing longer periods of shared perception and more complex exchanges of thought patterns. Dr. Patel had developed a theory about what was happening. Your brains are essentially teaching each other, she explained, showing Naomi the comparative scans of both her brain and Guardian's. Human cognition emphasizes abstract thought, language processing, and long-term planning. Ursine cognition prioritizes sensory processing, spatial awareness, and instinctual response patterns. As the bridge allows these different cognitive strengths to intermingle, both of your neural architectures are adapting, creating new pathways to accommodate the shared information. The practical results were both fascinating and disorienting. Naomi found herself experiencing moments of hyperacute sensory awareness, able to detect subtleties of scent, sound, and electromagnetic fields that humans normally couldn't perceive. Her spatial memory had improved dramatically. She could navigate through the forest blindfolded, building perfect mental maps of her surroundings through a combination of the scent, sound, and air pressure. Guardian, meanwhile, was displaying increasingly sophisticated problem-solving abilities. She could now understand basic written words presented on large cards, comprehend simple mathematical concepts, and communicate through a system of deliberate movements that Dr. Whitley had developed, allowing her to speak in a rudimentary language of gestures. Most remarkable were the periods of full consciousness sharing, brief episodes where Naomi could experience life through Guardian's body while maintaining awareness of her own. These moments had progressed from accidental flashes to controlled exchanges that could be initiated by either of them, though they rarely lasted more than a few minutes before the mental strain became too great. During these exchanges, Naomi had gained insights into bear existence that no human researcher had ever accessed. The complex emotional life of these creatures, their detailed mental mapping of territories, the way they perceived time and seasons through subtle environmental cues. Guardian, in turn, had begun to grasp human concepts like technology, social structures, and even the abstract notion of law and justice. The investigation into synaptics, meanwhile, had reached a critical juncture. Agent Martinez arrived at the facility one morning with news that sent ripples of excitement and concern through the research team. "We've located Dr. Eleanor Voss," she announced, referencing the lead scientist behind the neural implant program who had disappeared when the FBI began investigating. "She's at a remote compound in northern Idaho, along with several other synaptics researchers and what appears to be a new laboratory facility." "Are you planning a raid?" Dr. Whitley asked. "Not yet. We need more intelligence about what's happening inside that compound. Satellite imagery shows heavy security, and we believe they may have more test subjects, both animal and possibly human, on site." She turned to Naomi. "That's where you and Guardian might be able to help." "How?" Naomi asked, though she already suspected what the agent would propose. "The compound is surrounded by wilderness, perfect bear habitat. If Guardian could approach the facility while you maintain your neural connection, you might be able to gather intelligence without alerting their security systems." Dr. Patel immediately objected. That would require Naomi to maintain a consciousness-sharing state for an extended period, much longer than they've managed so far. The neurological strain could be dangerous. And what about Guardian? Naomi added. She'd be at risk of capture or worse if they detected her. Guardian has a significant advantage, Agent Martinez pointed out. She looks like any other Grizzly from the outside. Unless they specifically scan for the implant signature, they'd have no reason to suspect she's anything more than a wild bear wandering near their property. After much discussion, a compromise was reached. They would attempt a limited reconnaissance mission, with Guardian approaching the compound's perimeter but not entering the actual facility grounds. Naomi would maintain the shared consciousness state from a secure location several miles away, where an FBI team could monitor her vital signs and brain activity. The preparation took days. Naomi and Guardian practiced extending their shared consciousness periods, gradually building up their endurance. Dr. Patel developed a cocktail of neural stabilizers that would help Naomi's brain handle the strain of prolonged dual awareness. The FBI established a command post in a cabin within range of the compound but far enough away to avoid detection. When the day arrived, Naomi felt a mixture of determination and apprehension as she settled into a specially designed reclining chair in the cabin's main room. Electrodes were attached to her head to monitor her brain activity, and an IV was inserted to deliver Dr. Patel's stabilizing compounds if needed. Remember, Dr. Whitley cautioned, at the first sign of neural distress, we pull you out, mission incomplete or not, your safety comes first. Naomi nodded, then closed her eyes and focused on the now familiar mental pathway that led to Guardian. The bear was waiting in a transport cage nearby, ready to be released into the forest once the connection was established. The sensation began as it always did, a stretching feeling, as if her consciousness was being gently pulled in two directions at once. Then came the disorienting double vision, the overlay of sensory inputs from two different bodies. She could feel her human form sitting in the chair, the cool electrodes on her skin, the sound of equipment humming in the background. But simultaneously she could feel Guardian's powerful body, the containment of the cage, the rich tapestry of scents from the nearby forest. "I'm connected," she reported, her voice sounding strange in her own ears as she coordinated speaking through her human body while maintaining awareness of Guardian's form. "Release her." The cage door was opened, and Guardian padded out, her massive paws moving with deliberate care across the forest floor. Naomi guided their shared consciousness, directing the bear toward the target while experiencing every step, every scent, every sound through Guardian's heightened senses. They moved through the forest for nearly an hour, navigating by landmarks the FBI had identified from satellite imagery. Through Guardian's eyes, Naomi could see with surprising clarity in the dim forest light. Through her nose, she could detect the passage of other animals, the presence of water sources, and eventually the faint chemical traces of human habitation ahead. "We're picking up signs of the compound," she reported back to the team. "I can smell fuel, cleaning chemicals, processed food." The sensory information Guardian provided was incredibly detailed, allowing Naomi to build a mental map of their surroundings that far exceeded what any human reconnaissance could have achieved. As they approached the perimeter, Guardian moved with increased caution, keeping to natural cover and avoiding open spaces. Through her ears, Naomi detected the faint electrical hum of security systems, motion sensors and cameras mounted on trees at intervals along an invisible boundary line. "They've extended their security perimeter into the natural forest," she reported. "Disguised tech in the trees, approximately 100 meters from any visible structures." Guardian paused behind a fallen log, raising her head slightly to peer toward the compound. Through her eyes, Naomi could make out a cluster of buildings in a cleared area, what appeared to be a main research facility, several smaller outbuildings, and a perimeter fence. But it was what Guardian's nose detected that sent a chill through Naomi's dual consciousness. "Bears," she said urgently. "I can smell multiple bears. At least 7 distinct individuals, all in close proximity. They must be keeping them in one of those structures." As if in response to this discovery, Guardian let out a low rumble, not loud enough to carry to the compound, but an expression of clear distress at the scent of captive members of her species. "Easy," Naomi soothed, using their connection to project calm. "We'll help them, but we need to gather more information first." Guardian continued to circle the perimeter at a safe distance, staying beyond the security sensors while gathering crucial intelligence through her acute senses. She detected the patterns of human movement. Approximately 20 individuals moving between buildings at regular intervals. She identified a helicopter landing pad, fuel storage, and what appeared to be a small armory based on the distinct smell of gun oil and explosives. Most disturbingly, she picked up scents that Guardian recognized, and Naomi, through their connection, came to understand represented fear, pain, and distress, both animal and human. Whatever was happening in that compound, it involved suffering. They had just completed a full circuit of the perimeter when disaster struck. A sudden gust of wind changed direction, carrying Guardian's scent directly toward the compound. Almost immediately, an alarm began to sound, and Naomi could hear voices shouting, doors slamming. "They've detected us," she reported urgently. "Guardian smells something wrong. Other bears are agitated." Through their connection, Naomi felt a surge of protective instinct from Guardian so powerful it almost overwhelmed their shared consciousness. The bear wanted, needed, to respond to the distress call she could now hear coming from her captive kin. "No," Naomi projected forcefully. "We can't help them by charging in. We need to retreat now." For a tense moment, Guardian's instincts warred with the human reasoning Naomi was projecting. Then, with reluctance that Naomi could feel as a physical sensation, the bear turned and began moving away from the compound, back toward deeper forest. They hadn't gone more than 50 yards when a new scent hit Guardian's nose. Human predators moving rapidly through the forest. A security team was deploying to investigate the perimeter breach. "They're tracking us," Naomi reported, feeling her heart rate increase in both bodies simultaneously. 5, maybe 6 humans, armed with tracking equipment. Guardian increased her pace, using her intimate knowledge of forest movement to navigate quickly while minimizing sound and sign. But the pursuit was well coordinated, with the team spreading out to cover multiple approach vectors. A sharp crack echoed through the forest. Not a gunshot, but a breaking branch as one of the pursuers moved closer than expected. Guardian froze, then slowly turned her massive head. Through her eyes, Naomi saw a man in tactical gear less than 30 feet away, raising what appeared to be a tranquilizer gun. What happened next occurred with such speed that Naomi's human mind could barely process it. Guardian's instincts took over, her powerful body exploding into motion. She charged not toward the man but at a tangent, crashing through underbrush to create maximum confusion before veering sharply in another direction. The tactic worked, momentarily. Shouts of alarm went up, the pursuit team's careful coordination disrupted by the sudden, violent movement. Guardian used the confusion to put distance between herself and the immediate threat, her powerful legs carrying her through the forest at a speed Naomi found exhilarating and terrifying in equal measure. But they weren't clear yet. The pursuit regrouped quickly, and now vehicles could be heard in the distance, ATVs or similar, moving along forest access roads to cut off escape routes. "They're trying to herd us," Naomi realized, the insight coming partly from her human strategic thinking and partly from Guardian's instinctual understanding of predator tactics. Through their connection, Naomi projected a new plan. Instead of running directly away from the compound, they would double back, using a creek bed to mask their scent trail, then circle around to approach the FBI observation post from an unexpected direction. Guardian understood immediately, adjusting course toward the sound of running water. They splashed into the cold creek, moving upstream for several hundred yards before emerging on the opposite bank and cutting across a ridgeline. The maneuver seemed to be working. The sounds of pursuit grew more distant, more scattered, as the security team followed false trails and checked the most obvious escape routes. They traveled for another hour, making a wide circuit that would eventually bring them back toward the FBI cabin. Naomi's dual consciousness was beginning to strain now, the prolonged connection taxing her neural pathways beyond anything they'd attempted before. She could feel a headache building in her human body, vision beginning to blur at the edges. "Need to disconnect soon," she managed to report to the team. "Can't maintain much longer." "Understood," came Dr. Whitley's voice, seemingly from very far away. "Guardian's tracker shows she's about 2 miles out. Can she make it back independently if you have to drop the connection?" "Yes," Naomi confirmed, feeling Guardian's agreement through their bond. The bear had memorized the route and could find her way back to the cabin without Naomi's guidance if necessary. They were less than a mile from safety when Guardian suddenly stopped, her nose working furiously as she detected a new scent on the wind. Through their connection, Naomi picked up the signal, human but not part of the security team. A single individual hiding in the forest ahead. Before Naomi could fully process this information, a figure stepped out from behind a tree directly in their path. A woman in her 50s, with short gray hair and the stern bearing of someone accustomed to authority, wearing hiking clothes that seemed incongruous with the wilderness setting. Guardian growled low in her throat, recognizing the scent signature from somewhere, a memory Naomi couldn't quite access through their connection. The woman raised her hand slowly, showing she was unarmed. "Subject 247, she said calmly, addressing Guardian directly. "And Ms. Chen, whom I assume is listening through their remarkable neural connection. I am Dr. Eleanor Voss, and I believe we need to talk." The lead scientist behind the entire neural implant program was standing before them, alone and apparently defenseless in the forest. Through their connection, Naomi felt Guardian's confusion and wariness mirroring her own. "I know you have no reason to trust me," Dr. Voss continued, "but what's happening at that compound has gone far beyond what I ever intended. The program has been corrupted, weaponized in ways I never approved." She took a small step forward. "I have critical information about the implants, about what they're planning, about how to shut it all down, but I need your help." Guardian remained motionless, a living wall of fur and muscle between the scientist and the path to safety. Through their connection, Naomi weighed their options. This could be a trap, or it could be their best chance to end the program that had violated both of them. The strain of maintaining the neural bridge was becoming too great. Naomi's vision was tunneling, her grasp on Guardian's consciousness slipping. With her last moment of shared awareness, she projected a decision to Guardian, a compromise between caution and opportunity. Then the connection broke, and Naomi snapped back fully into her human body, gasping as the electrodes registered the neural separation event. She slumped in the chair, exhausted beyond measure, as Dr. Whitley and Agent Martinez rushed to her side. "Guardian," she managed to say through dry lips, "she's bringing someone in." An hour later, Dr. Eleanor Voss sat handcuffed in the FBI cabin's main room, while Guardian lay outside on the porch, refusing to move more than a few feet from the building. The bear had escorted the scientists directly to their location, maintaining a threatening proximity that made it clear any attempt to flee would be met with immediate consequences. "Start talking," Agent Martinez instructed, recording device active on the table between them. Dr. Voss looked haggard, the lines on her face deepened by what appeared to be months of stress and fear. "I never intended any of this," she began. "The neural implant program was designed for conservation and rescue applications only, a way to guide bears away from dangerous human encounters, to help them avoid forest fires, to assist in locating lost hikers. Yet you implanted unknown technology into wild animals without any ethical oversight or approval," Dr. Whitley pointed out coldly. "Yes," she admitted, "I justified it as necessary for real-world testing that couldn't be replicated in captive settings. I told myself the benefits would outweigh the ethical compromises." She looked down at her hands. "I was wrong." "What changed?" Naomi asked from her position on the couch, where she was still recovering from the neural strain of the extended connection. Meridian Holdings took controlling interest in Synaptics 18 months ago. They brought in new directives, new researchers. They weren't interested in conservation. They wanted weapons, surveillance tools, deniable assets for operations that could